Hello, and welcome to this Treatment Advocacy Center webinar on AOT, True Stories of Recovery. My name is Eric Smith, and I thank you for tuning in today and giving us some of your valuable time. Many of you may have heard me speak over the years about how assisted outpatient treatment, also known as AOT, saved my life. In today's webinar, you will hear from two other people, truly extraordinary individuals, who shared just how powerful of an impact AOT has been and continues to be in their lives. First, you will hear from Isaac Pino. In his talk titled Finding Health and Finding Myself, Isaac shares how difficult it was to get help for his co-occurring disorders, bipolar disorder and an alcohol and drug addiction, before he found AOT. If you are curious about whether or not AOT can help people when addiction is part of the equation, you will know it can after hearing Isaac speak. Then you will hear from AOT graduate Bradley Tarr about how AOT turned his life around after many failed attempts to get help in his talk titled Reclaiming My Life. Bradley's journey exemplifies how AOT is crucial for many people with SMI to achieve meaningful and lasting recovery, even after many prior years of other methods offering little to no hope for recovery. After you hear their incredible and inspirational journeys, you will all have an opportunity to ask both of them questions, as they have both graciously agreed to take part in a live Q&A. Please use the chat function in Zoom to ask your questions, and we will begin to answer them after both Isaac and Bradley have finished sharing their stories. Let's get started by hearing Isaac Pino's story. So how are you feeling being here today, Bradley, about to share your incredible story?
I'm psyched. I never thought, like, even if you were to rewind back a year ago, I would have never anticipated me being a part of something like this. And it took some of the coaching and some of the coaxing out, some of the writing process and the speaking process to help me do better at it. That really helped me realize, like, no, like, my story can actually be a big instrument and a big tool for good, for awareness, for education, for inspiration. And like, but if you would have tried to, like, if you would have told me a year or two ago that I'd be doing this and all the people that it would either directly or indirectly impact or reach, I would not have believed you.
Interested in hearing my story. My name is Isaac Pino, and I'm here to share my journey with you. AOT helped me learn to live a healthy and happy life, and it can do that for other people too. Before I started using drugs, my life was awesome. I had no reason to use drugs, and I was raised in an amazing family. My parents were a little strict, but worked hard to give my siblings and me what we wanted and needed. I can honestly say that I was raised in a loving family. We traveled through Southern California, visiting Disneyland, Universal Studios, and attended to a San Francisco 49ers game. We traveled through San Antonio, visiting Six Flags, museums, and the River Walk. We would go camping to Silver Lake, Bonito Lake, and Silver City. My life was great before using drugs. At times, I worked up to 2 different jobs because I enjoyed making money to buy things, and most of all, able to do many things. I also enjoyed my family and friends. I really enjoyed my life to a whole. I just fell into using drugs that would turn from being recreational to an addiction. It wasn't up until my late teens and early adulthood that I started using drugs. Using drugs impacted every relationship I had with my friends and family. I would be lying if I said it did not. I've gained and lost many relationships in my life, but the strongest are the ones I have today with my family. My relationships were impacted by drug use because it resulted in me in having rapidly shifting moods and personalities hurting many people around me. Also, it caused me to say and do things to people that were very inappropriate. I was saying sexual comments to many to many females, especially to friends and of the family. My absurd comments would also lead to saying them to certain family members, which caused mine and their respect for each other to fade away. My male friends were afraid to leave me alone with their wives. Towards the end of my drug use, I started to get worse and worse, that so much of my vocabulary was no longer appropriate. When I would sober up, I would later become disappointed, disgusted, and ashamed of myself. The worst part came whenever I did drugs and had sexual intercourse with females I should not have. I knew I had no business fraternizing with so many females, although we were consulting adults. It still was not right, but I was so high that I was not thinking properly at the time. I used so much profanity and so much anger to express my feelings that people started to not like me. I started to realize that I was losing control of myself and that I would bring harm and danger to people around me. My behavior was a shock to other mutual friends and family. So many thoughts would go through my mind while I was high, and the depression was kicking in. I did not know how to control it. I would also turn to social media to express my feelings about myself, or if I had something to say about someone. Text messaging females that I now know were inappropriate. But at the time, I had no idea what I was doing. I was creating a monster and nothing was stopping me. My actions resulted in me to lose many relationships due to the loss of trust, values, honesty, and respect. The reason for this was because I had no feeling toward anything or anyone. I just did not care what I was doing. All I knew is if I could not have self-respect for myself, then I could not have respect for anyone. And no one wanted to be around a person like me. My appearance was probably the most important factor why people started to fade away from me, because I was starting to lose everything about myself, and my appearance was not looking too appealing. My hygiene was off. I rapidly picked at my face, which caused me to bleed and have scars. My eyes were all red and appeared wide open. My mother would say it looked like I had raccoon eyes. My skin became very dark and I was sweating all the time. Throughout my addiction, I avoided many people because I preferred staying isolated. Using drugs allowed me to feel like Superman that released the feeling of being numb to anything and everything around me. I remember the best pain drugs is that one or second hit automatically put life on pause and kept me from being around certain friends and family. That later became my motivation to get high because I wanted to shut down my feelings for that one feeling. My parents did not raise me this way, and I come from a very respectful family. I cannot really say my life was great before being diagnosed with bipolar disorder because I was already using drugs when being diagnosed. Earlier, I mentioned that my life was awesome before addiction, and it was but during addiction. But during addiction. And I was diagnosed with several mental illnesses, and that's where my life started to turn in different directions. My life was now starting to go bad at the time because I wasn't aware or sober enough to cope and understand my mental health conditions. What I'm trying to say is that during and in between addiction and being diagnosed with mental health conditions, that it is where I can say my life was not so great. I suffer from a few mental health conditions and substance addiction due to a motor vehicle accident, an MVA that left me paralyzed and confined to a wheelchair. It is possible I was bipolar my entire life, but using drugs made the symptoms much worse. I cannot say even if I ever never did drugs, I would not be suffering from addiction and bipolar disorder, because most of it all started when I had the MBA. Since then, I have felt that my life was not really great, but before my MBA, my life was amazing, although I had already experimented with drugs at the age of 19. I didn't believe in addiction since I was using them in a more recreational use.
Isaac, what are your general thoughts being here today as we've heard probably the opening third of your incredible story? What are your thoughts as you reflect on being here today?
Well, even if we don't get to finish the story, they heard most of, I guess, 3/4 worth of it. Um, I'm feeling very amazing. Uh, just excuse the groggy voice. I have a trach, so. But that was due to the MBA, the motor vehicle accident. But I'm feeling very amazing, very optimistic about how we're trying to send a message towards other people to help other people. And that's probably the most important thing about why I'm feeling so excited and amazing right now.
Thank you so much for sharing. I see there's a comment here that says, thank you, Isaac, for being so honest and transparent. Very touching. And I know you and I, over the course of the last several weeks, few months that we've been working on this, I was really moved by something that you said numerous times, right up until the most recent time we spoke. And that is, if your main goal is, even if you're able to help just one person, it's all worth it, and will make you feel like you're here and making a difference. And I can't tell you how refreshing and inspiring that is, because there, of course, like a lot of folks want to say, well, it's about the number of people. Like, it won't matter unless it's for a number of people. And from the very beginning right up through now, you've always told me, look, I just, like, if I can make a difference in one person's life, that will really be what means something to me. And I just can't thank you enough for that. For Bradley, I know, Bradley, you and I had talked quite a bit, and it actually didn't even show up in the talk that hopefully we get to hear today, but a tripod of what we talk about, with what your interests are, being philosophy, history, theology. Did I remember those three correctly?
Yep.
Okay.
I call it the tripod of my life, and I call it like the tripod of my three passions. They're theology, philosophy, and history.
So how do you see any one or all three of those fitting into your recovery? Because I know personally from talking with you that all three of those things contribute greatly to everything it is that you think in your way of life. But if we could sort of get in your own words now, how you feel they fit into your recovery.
Well, the theology fits in because I'm very plugged into my local Catholic parish, my local Catholic diocese. I even sometimes send in questions to the bishop and he responds to me. So that's really cool. But yeah, theologically, even things as simple as like meditative and contemplative prayers like the Rosary or the Jesus prayer. Like, I have a prayer cord right here, which I sometimes also wear as a necklace, which I ordered from Ukraine. So Ukrainian Catholics actually made it for me. But yeah, like that's the theology part of it, is that it grounds my daily life in a very therapeutic way. The philosophy grounds my life because, like, like I have, it's funny, it's like kind of an oxymoron to call it this title, but from Barnes Noble, it's like this thick, and it's called The Basic Works of Aristotle. They're not basic at all, but like, the philosophy side of it is kind of, I often see like church history and philosophy as a two-sided coin. They have to cooperate with one another in culture. So the philosophy kind of helps the theology side not to get too pie in the sky, And then historically, whether it's US history, European history, African history, Asian history, of course, the Catholic Church has evangelized so many areas in the world. So it's often awesome to see how my faith and even how like other faiths of the world have affected like history. That's why I see them as a tripod. Like you cannot have a theology without having a philosophy and a history. And it's the same for the other two. Like the three, in some way or another, always interweave with one another, and that's why I'm so interested in all three of them. And I'm
Thank you.
also interested in not whitewashing history. I don't care which country it is or which religion it is. I don't like it when history is whitewashed. I like to read a lot of the newer books that are coming out, like, oh, here's all of the, scandals that they kept hidden for 100, 200, 300 years,
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing, Bradley. And my guess is as the folks who are listening and watching you right now, both of you, what they're hearing is thoughtful, grounded, very involved in reality individuals. And that's kind of, one of the main goals with AOT, which I personally went through, where, when I started in it and, before AOT and leading up to when I got in it, I was so far removed from reality, I wouldn't have been able to, be as aware and involved and plugged into reality as you are. And the same here with Isaac. And I know after speaking with you, Isaac, a huge part of your story, as is mine, you and I have talked about this many times over the past few months, was drugs. And, we had similar choice of drugs. Like for me, I had an issue with cocaine, you had an issue with cocaine, stimulants, and so on. And I, over the years, have received pushback saying, well, there's nothing in AOT to help someone if addiction is part of the problem. And so I was being called, an outlier, essentially saying, well, okay, Eric, if it helped you want to stay sober, that's fine, but there's nothing in AOT to really help people like that. Then I heard from you, who just like me had such a serious involvement of addiction, and your AOT team. And if I may use, do you mind if I use her first name?
Sure.
Okay, great. So VNA, who we know and love, excellent professional, part of your team. And she is, as one of her specialties, a chemical dependency counselor specialist. And so AOT was able to provide you a means through a professional trained in chemical dependency counseling, those with SUD, that substance use disorder, to receive treatment and care. And you got that treatment and care, and you're now approaching, am I correct, 1.5 years of sobriety?
Yes.
Please, if you can, tell us about what you learned from VNA, and if you could, please also share that wonderful story about the ripping up the paper and the family, and then
Okay.
the rest of it. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the AOT team that I'm working with, because they provided me with a counselor such as VNA to help through my addiction. So I'm very grateful for that. And right now I want to take the time real quick to say thank you. And it's why we are here today. I learned a lot of things from VNA, basically how the littlest things are what count the most. We talked about grabbing a piece of paper, draw your friends and family or all the people you love on there, and just draw them. Okay, so I drew them. Then she goes, okay, now fold the paper and tear it. Okay, fold the paper again and tear it. Okay, fold the paper again and tear it until it got to little pieces. And she said, okay, now you can put it back together. And I was like, well, that's gonna be hard. And she goes, that's how hard it is when you break trust from your friends and family. It's very hard to get amends, but the only way you can do it is being honest to yourself, be honest with them, and you can regain back those pieces. You could put those pieces back together. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be difficult. It's not gonna be easy, but it's a tough task for us to take on as people that use drugs, because a lot of people they viewed me as a liar, as 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 somebody that's no longer in the box, but yet out of the box. But not knowing that life life is a lot, shows us a lot of different, um, or brings us a lot of type of different events upon us for us to break trust. I don't know if I'm making any sense right now, but yeah, but basically the paper was how I was gonna rebuild my what I was doing. So it's with things with VNA are becoming educational. Like right now, she has me reading a book, and it talks about manipulation and things like that. That's one thing that I would do a lot. Um, I I would manipulate people, and you see, and right now I could already be a graduate of the AOT program because I've been in it over a year and a half. Well, about a year and a half. Um, the only reason I haven't graduated from AOT is because since I was going through a pandemic, we were going through a pandemic, I didn't receive the full care of what the AOT team had to offer. So now going out a little bit of the pandemic, we're able to, um, eh, they're able to teach me and show me and meet with me in person and do things with me to in order for me to succeed again. And it's why I keep asking for extra commitments, extended commitment of the AOT every 3 months. uh, I was granted by the judge in December an extra 90 days. So he did say I could stay as long as I can if I want to. I do want to because I want to learn from this program. Again, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show people that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Uh, no matter how deep in the hole we are, we can all crawl out. It doesn't it doesn't it doesn't it shouldn't hold you back, is what I'm saying. Uh, it if you can be honest with yourself, you can you can do a commitment with AOT, but you have to be honest to yourself. Granted, there's times where certain environments and certain people that where drugs or alcohol might be a factor. I never struggled with alcohol, but they are right. I need to stay away from environments where there's those type of things because they are what encourage the addiction. Um, However, I'm at the point now to where I'm able to say no to a lot of things and not agree with a lot of friends or not be on the same page as a lot of friends or want to do what a lot of friends want to do. And it's also because I want to be honest with my family. My family is probably the most important thing that I do and I do have and I love very much. And again, I don't want to disappoint my AOT team. They worked hard. They're working hard. Um, but I'm very excited that we're able, like I said, like you said earlier, you mentioned earlier, Eric. I'm trying to help one person out of the room. One person. If I can at least help one person, I've achieved and accomplished my goal, and that's a long term goal.
That is beautiful and perfectly said, Isaac. It really warms my heart. Really becoming, friends with you and Bradley over the course of the last few months I've been speaking with you. And it sounds like from your story that you would recommend, based on your personal experience, that for those who are facing addiction as part of, various SMI diagnosis or diagnoses, that you would recommend, if they're at a point they can be reached, well, let me back up a bit. So you and I both know that in the depths of addiction, right? Like back when we were using lots of drugs, like cocaine, there wasn't really anything that could be said to us that was going to make us not use drugs, because getting high was very, very important to you, very important to me, helped us not have to be aware of dealing with a lot of the symptoms associated with SMI. But AOT, which is this incredible program that, as you pointed out, provides you a team of people that you need when really nothing else before that worked. It brings together this team of people to help not only address your SMI, but also co-occurring substance use disorder, addiction. And I don't know if you're aware of this, Isaac, but most programs around the country do not have a chemical dependency specialist. There are people who can address it, like social workers in some instances, counselors in others, psychiatrists, judges may feel the need to weigh in on that as well. But it sounds like you're saying there is value for your story, for your experience. There is value in having someone being able to address chemical dependency issues. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's why I was saying that I'm very appreciative and grateful for the AOT program here in El Paso. Reason being is because of that simple reason. Not everybody has the chemical dependency counselor, and I was blessed with this AOT team that actually had one. And especially it's good that they have one here in El Paso, because El Paso is a place where there's a lot of substance use, and it's because it's easier to get right away right across the border. And it's good that they're going to have more people go through this type of program. Maybe I'll save more people than just one person out of the room, especially with VNA working there. I really think this AOT program is strong. Like, it's so strong that I would recommend it to a lot of people. If there was a way they can even get also peer specialists in there would also work. People that have been through what other people have been through. That way they can share their experiences with them and let them know, that it is possible for you to change not who you are, but change your habits.
Thank you so much, Isaac. And I was about to ask Bradley another question, but it looks like I may have access to the videos again. So I really hate to interrupt this incredible conversation we're having, but let's see if I can get back to the videos real quick. And thank you all so much for your patience. And thank you everyone who's attending today for your patience. You're actually in for a real treat, because in addition to these videos, you're getting to hear some unplanned discussion that we had just now that I hope really added some value to the remainder of these videos you're about to hear. So with that said, right back to it.
I suffer from a few mental health conditions and substance addiction due to a motor vehicle accident, an MVA that left me paralyzed and confined to a wheelchair. It is possible I was bipolar my entire life, but using drugs made the symptoms much worse. I cannot say even if I ever never did drugs, I would not be suffering from addiction and bipolar disorder, because most of it all started when I had the MBA. Since then, I have felt that my life was not really great, but before my MBA, my life was amazing. Although I had already experimented with drugs at the age of 19. I didn't believe in addiction since I was using them in a more recreational use, and did not think it would later lead somehow turn into addiction. The first thing I want people to know is that addiction is an illness, but as bad is an illness just as bad as a mental illness. And some people have the combination of both. I also want people to know that there is so much help and programs to help cope with mental illnesses and or drug addiction. There is always help and hope if the person seeking help allows to receive help. Sobriety and recovery are possible, but it also starts with the person seeking help wanting to get better. Drug addicts are not bad people, but they are sick, and society needs to understand that these people need help to live a high quality life. Nothing is impossible if someone can change their mindset. The use of drugs comes from a person's mind and pain that they are feeling emotionally or physically, and sometimes both. I, as an addict, would hold on to my feelings. Therefore, the use of drugs was used to cope with feelings, and that's why addiction was at a rise for me. So I would not feel anything real. I really think addiction and illegal use of drugs are dangerous, and its long effects should be taught more in schools to reduce the use of drugs and help people by learning to say more than just no, even as a child. That can save lives and maybe reduce the chance of someone becomes addicted. AOT is helping me in so many ways I did not think was possible. It is teaching me to find the person I really am. It has helped me find honesty within myself, and it has taught me to learn to love myself enough to help other people around me. The many tools and strategies in AOT have allowed me to stay clean and sober, and I am working well with others because this is something I wanted to do in my life. With their assistance, I can set and accomplish many goals whether they are short or long-term and permanent goals of mine, like staying sober. With this, I can maintain sobriety as well as maintain my mental health and my mental and physical health. When I first started AOT, they validated me as a person and took into consideration many of my concerns of how I would stay sober and what would it mean if I were to relapse. I even wondered what if the program was not for me. I was wondering and asking myself the what ifs. However, they had many ideas to share with me on how to deal with mental relapse, such as writing or talking about a certain thought or mood, and the use of many activities, such as drawing members of my family on a piece of paper and then tearing it up and trying to put the pieces together, which showed how I can destroy my family and friends and how difficult it is to mend those relationships. We use tools from meditating to listening to music and going out to do things I live without to do things I live without the use of drugs today. AOT worked with me by letting my parents join in some of the sessions just to show them how much I was progressing in the program. The AOT set the same goal as me to stay sober and complete a successful program. AOT taught me how to work with my thoughts and actions by simply avoiding any type of places where there would be drugs, to hanging out with people who do not use drugs. The simplest and smallest things are what can count the most, and it's mind over matter. Of course, everyone's journey is different, but AOT helped me build up a character resiliency. The program also seeks help in many areas outside of their department for me to participate in and guide me with many resources to help understand that there is always help for my mental health and drug addiction. Setting my goals through AOT has allowed me to make my life and future very promising, and most of all, has helped me build a healthier relationship with family and friends. The program has taught me to avoid places and let go of people who are not healthy for me. This all helps me stay motivated to stay sober day to day. I still attend and go places, but without using any type of drugs. I would strongly recommend an AOT program for anyone that wants and is seeking help. Joining an AOT program is an amazing experience that would be the best decision an addict can do for his or her life. I requested an extension of my AOT order, not because I am incompetent or do not have the confidence enough, but to learn more and be as productive as I can be before I accomplish my goal of completing the program. I feel the more a person gets to learn, that more that person can help succeed and accomplish his or her goals. The AOT team I'm working with are working with me to find programs I can join and be aware of to help me. AOT to me looks like an amazing tool to have during recovery because they make me feel safe and make my voice feel heard. Due to the pandemic, I recently started attending hearings, or better known as roundtables, in person. Being able to attend, I have met some other people from the program. I am asked questions by members of my AOT team, such as how my sobriety is going, how do I feel about sobriety and the AOT program. The question that always comes up is that if I think the AOT is working for me and if I want to continue with the program. I am also asked, how are things going on in my life? What do I think I can work on to make my situation better? I answer based on how I am feeling. And of course, they also guide me with suggestions on trying to accomplish those goals. For example, my OT team meets me where I'm by understanding that I have cravings or triggers throughout the year, but they suggest I stay away from people and places that might give me the urge to get drunk. And that is a great suggestion from them that I listen to and agree with. Another suggestion from my AOT team is for me to take my medication exactly as prescribed. I do take my meds as prescribed because doing so helps keep my symptoms managed and keeps me out of the hospital. When I first enter the room, I am a bit nervous, and as the hearing goes on, I start to feel comfortable as the judge will ask me about my interest in hobbies or just ask simple questions. I never knew how huge my support team was until I was until I saw everyone in the room, and it does make a difference to see everyone in person as to video hearings throughout the pandemic. I feel being in person is definitely more effective because both my team and I are interacting as establishing better eye contact, use of body language, less distractions, and fear of communication due to the possibility of technology failure. I personally prefer the in-person hearings of AOT more than via computer. Before AOT, I was not taking my medications as prescribed. My AOT team helped me reach an understanding that I needed to take my medication as it is prescribed to help me live a healthy and happy life. My AOT team helped educate me on the importance of medication, how the medication affects my brain wiring, and being educated about the difference between street drugs and prescribed drugs. In fact, with the help of support of AOT treatment team, I am now approaching a year and a half of sobriety. I am also learning to love my family, my friends, and myself. I hope that sharing my story with you today will help others see how AOT helped me and can help do the same for others like me. I'm in the process of finalizing a personally speaking blog that will be published by the Treatment Advocacy Center, and I hope you all share it far and wide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isaac, for sharing that story and your connection and love of AOT that helped you find love for yourself and others again. It's just so powerful. Without hesitation, I'd like to move on to the next video, which is Bradley Tarr sharing his story. And as All of you have heard since the start of this, where it turned into some conversation before the sharing of these stories. These are just two extraordinary individuals, and what AOT helps accomplish is just totally evidenced by everything you're hearing today from both of our extraordinary speakers. So let me go ahead and share screen again, and you will hear from Bradley Tarr.
My name is Bradley Tarr.
Audio good and video good? Excellent. Thank y'all.
I'm currently 28 years old. Since the age of 11, I've been diagnosed with mental illness. From 11 to 26, I was in and out of hospitals well over 20 times due to my symptoms. At 26, what finally turned it all around for me and has given me my longest period of mental and medical stability was me being a part of the Assisted Outpatient Treatment Program, or AOT. So I wish to convey to you my mental health story before, during, and after AOT entered into my life. When I was 11 was when my symptoms first emerged. I was in the 4th grade. I went through a major suicidal depressive season. My symptoms of either hypomanic or depressive symptoms can last anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks, and they usually happen sometime between the beginning of February to the end of May. They can be triggered by a long winter, an early spring, a traumatic event, or any major stressors that are happening at that time in my life. For me, personally, my first major depressive season was triggered by a traumatic event, family issues, and the stress of the upcoming 4th grade proficiency test, all happening around the same time. I was eventually sent to a children's hospital for 2 weeks and placed on medication. My original diagnosis was simply chronic depression. Then, from 9th grade through 12th grade, I was virtually a boomerang. I was in and out of the hospital so much. Sometimes my symptoms could be triggered by a sports season, or by a big test, or by a girlfriend breaking up with me. I experienced suicidal depression, insomnia, brain hypertension, paranoia, and severe manic symptoms, sometimes back to back. What was truly inconvenient during this time was that my psychiatrist was changed several times over, and each doctor would radically change which meds I was on. One particular med gave me such a side effect of rage that I ended up randomly punching several holes in my mom's cabinets and walls. We know with certainty that it was a side effect of the meds, because up until that point, I had been having a good day, and the anger was entirely unprovoked. At one point in my sophomore year, there was even a social media hate group created entitled, "I Survived the Wrath of Brad Tarr." My principal quickly had it taken down. It was a page dedicated to humiliating me, attempting to ruin my reputation, to fan the flames of rumors about my supposed behavior and intentions, and to caricaturing my Christian faith. Fortunately, in my junior and senior years, my group of friends improved greatly, which may have saved my life. My usual diagnosis during this period of my life was either bipolarism or unspecified mood disorder. I graduated high school at 19 years old. 4 years later, while I was at college studying philosophy humanities, my symptoms flared up all over again. They were so bad that the college decided to send me home. I was scaring everyone on campus so much. I had gone 3 days without sleep, was having angry outbursts and relatively small and inconsequential matters, and was behaving in a very paranoid manner. I was even pacing around campus anxiously, talking to myself. These symptoms were compounded by the frustrations that the college had absolutely no nursing or medical staff, was a 35-minute drive to the nearest full-fledged pharmacy, and the hours available to see the dean of men, the dean of students, or the president of the college were very, very restricted. The president in particular was often on the road promoting the college. At my worst, I was threatening people and was convinced that they were conspiring to hurt me. I ended up spending 14 days in a New England hospital, and then the president of the college, a dear friend who cared about me deeply, paid in full for my plane ticket home. He never asked in any way to be reimbursed, and I'm indebted to his kindness. Well, Within 4 weeks of being home, my symptoms were scaring even my mother so much that she dropped me off at the front door of the county hospital. Looking back now, my mother tells me that she was legitimately afraid that I would hurt her, and for safety and as a precaution would lock her bedroom door at night in case my delusions and hallucinations would flare up in the middle of the night. Thankfully, my symptoms never once became bad enough to where I considered harming my own mother. But to this day, I understand where she was coming from. At that point, for that season, she said that she could not cope with me, that I was illogical, I was unreasonable, that she was unable to continue to share an apartment with me and I had to get out. My symptoms were delusional, making me illogical. My grasp on reality was tenuous at best. I had hallucinations, making me very unreasonable. It is hard to reason with someone seeing, hearing, and smelling things that are simply not there. It was winter and I was homeless because the hospital had refused to take me in, and I had, at this point, estranged myself from family. None of them knew how to cope with me at that point, not even my siblings. I was eventually taken in by a homeless shelter operated by the local mental health agency. I was there for about a month in small quarters that were crowded and cramped with about a dozen or so people, many of whom were sicker than even I was. Eventually, after several days of being verbally threatened and bullied by others, at one point, a schizophrenic man loudly threatened to slit my throat open. I reared back and punched a hole in the wall of the shelter. This landed me on 14 months of intensive mental health court probation. I entered the probation program being extremely mad that no one else was being punished for having threatened my life. The nurse attendants weren't held accountable for having never addressed the bullying issues when I reported them. But I, a severely mentally ill man, was having my clearly provoked actions while symptomatic held against me legally. Thankfully, my mom at this point took me back into her household, but that was small solace. While on the probation program, I had to do several things and I had to juggle them all at once, keeping them straight in my head. I had to report to the local municipal court building some 2 or 3 times a week for random drug and alcohol tests. I had no car of my own at this time, but even if I couldn't get a ride to the building, which was around 7 miles away, mostly uphill the entire way, I was forced to have to walk there, regardless of inclement or even severe weather which included if it was thunderstorming, snowing, slushy, icy, etc. Even if the traffic both ways was horrible, and much of the walk had no sidewalks. If I didn't, I'd be thrown in the county jail for 30 days. I had to pay nearly $1,000 in restitution for the hole in the wall. The fact of the matter is, if I had been formed, coached, treated, and cared for in a program such as AOT, I never would have punched the hole in the wall in the first place. I may have never been estranged temporarily from my mom. I may have never even been sent home from the college. If AOT had existed even a single decade, 10 years earlier in my county of Ohio, then the program probably would have been introduced into my life while I was still in high school. And many of these struggles I may never have gone through at all. Or if I did, at least I would have not been going through them alone. I would have had advocates. While in the probation program called mental health court, I also had to go to talk therapy, anger management, schizophrenia classes, psychiatric appointments, court hearings with the judge once a month, all of which happened frequently and all of which were 7 to 11 miles away. If I missed anything, I was threatened with an automatic month in jail. At one point, I remember saying to my probation officer, "I just don't appreciate being treated like a common criminal," to which she responded, "Well, the fact of the matter is, you are a criminal and a violent criminal, and we have well-grounded suspicions that you indeed have a long history with drugs and alcohol. You got yourself into this mess, you can get yourself out." I don't repeat this to decry law enforcement or civil service. I appreciate them, thank goodness for them. But sadly, it is part of my story. I was so happy when I graduated mental health probation court. It was one of the most trying ordeals of my life. 2 years later, I again entered into a symptomatic season, the worst of my entire life, in fact.
From February through May of 2019, I was hospitalized 5 times in 3 months. I was what I call super symptomatic. I was depressed, then manic, then depressed again. I had severe bouts of insomnia, paranoia, delusions, and severe headaches. I had visual, auditory, and olfactory hallucinations. I was convinced for about 3 weeks that my mother smelled like an open sewer. I was terrified of her. For a week after that, I kept hallucinating that I was throwing up all over my room. But my mom said I hadn't thrown up, which made me distrust her even more. My delusions would range. At one point, I thought I was the director of the NSA. Another time that I was the Secretary of Defense. I saw all things around me as a coded message from the government. For 2 weeks, I was a 007 agent. My delusions at that point had swam the pond. I thought that I was encountering MI6 agents almost everywhere I went. They were even dispersed and scattered among the crowd during Mass at church. For a week, I just knew that I was a member of the Roman Curia, an advisor to Pope. Lastly, and most sadly, for a week, I thought I was married to my high school sweetheart. After these 3 months, I was brought before a local magistrate, and I thought, oh no, not mental health court probation again, but this is where the Assisted Outpatient Treatment Program, or AOT, entered my life, and it turned my whole life around for the better. The magistrate forwarded me to a county judge. The judge then organized a team of well-trained experts around me. I got a new psychiatrist. Again, I appreciate psychiatrists. They're a great profession and a needed one. But for 3 months in 2019, my former psychiatrist had been Skyping me from another state, and after 3 emergency appointments via Skype, had still refused to change my meds or even so much as reconsider their dosage. On the flip side, when AOT was brought into my life, I was gifted with a brand new psychiatrist, one who reviewed my entire medical history, all of the files and paperwork concerning my symptoms and care going all the way back to when I was 11. She even dug into information on me that had long since been gathering dust, behavior reports from my high school, and files from the Children's Hospital. And finally, we nailed down a firm diagnosis for me. I was diagnosed as having schizoaffective disorder. My psychiatrist is very attentive to my needs, my body language, and the rhythm of both my symptoms and symptomatic seasons. As an integral part of my AOT treatment team, I was given a case manager. He meets with me once every 14 days for me to have someone to hang out with, run errands with, and he counsels me and helps me to establish and ground my goals. He has become a great friend and a trusted confidant. Once every 14 days, he takes me literally anywhere in the county that I need to go. Groceries, he can take me. To renew my driver's license or plates at the DMV, he can take me. To get my lithium level blood work checked, he can take me. To the mall or Walmart or Barnes & Noble to buy Christmas presents or birthday presents for my nieces and nephews or for my siblings' anniversary, he can take me. He not only manages my files and reports to the local mental health agency on my updated improvements and goals, he also is a life coach, an encourager. In a lot of ways, he is like a constant accountability partner and even a type of life raft when it comes to helping me manage my symptoms, especially through my worst time of year, February through May. He is the first person I call if I'm having a bad day, and the first person I inform if I experience that my delusions or hallucinations or insomnia are getting bad and taking hold in my daily life. And he is a phenomenal listener. Sometimes we don't go anywhere in particular that is an errand, but we simply hang out at a park or at my church, and he practices the nearly lost art of listening, hearing me ramble and rant about theology, philosophy, history, science, or any current event that is stressing me. And it is very cathartic for me, adding to my overall health, that someone hears me. For a while, until I no longer needed it, I was given a talk therapy counselor who helped me organize my thought patterns and maintain a healthy mind and a healthy outlook. They also coached me on how to slow down racing thoughts and on how to catch prematurely and root out the beginnings of delusions. For around 16 months, once a month, I reported back to the judge, who was like a general, receiving reports and organizing the entire effort. These people invested in me. They didn't just label or categorize me. They care about my life in its full context and not just if I fill a quota. They see me as a person and not just a case study. The approach of AOT is holistic. The whole person not only recuperating for a time, but being formed into a rhythm of continuous healthy living, mind, body, and soul. I was the first person in my county to ever graduate from AOT, but I hope that I won't be the last. My AOT team collaborates with me to help me develop and keep track of my goals, my thoughts, and my health in a systematic method of wellness. By systematic, I mean if I'm having a bad day, I know I can call my case manager. If I am teetering on the edge of being more symptomatic, I know I can reach out to my psychiatrist to explore my options going forward on whether or not I need an emergency appointment or if the situation is severe enough that I require the safe environment of the hospital. My AOT team encourages me to have the bravery to learn new things and dedicate myself to staying stable, all while also helping me find meaning in my life. That each day, week, and month can be dedicated to new purposes, to fresh goals. I'm what you might call an enthusiastic alumnus of the Assisted Outpatient Treatment Program. Okay, AOT brought me from hopeless recycling of symptomatic seasons to a place where I can see a season coming, fight it, counteract it, and have an entire team to help me do just that. This program is for anyone who wants to be not only managing symptoms, but beating them. I truly believe that it is put in place to save lives. AOT even gave me the tools to educate my family about my condition, about how to tell if I'm having a bad day, and especially to tell when I'm fully symptomatic. For instance, I always tell my mom, who I live with, if I went the previous night without sleep. And we have a standing protocol, a precaution, that if I go 3 nights in a row with very little or no sleep, we immediately call a squad to come and check me out and notify my psychiatrist for an emergency appointment. Also, my mom can always immediately know if I'm having a bad or off day if she wakes up and sees me in the morning wearing a red shirt. In particular, if I'm feeling very bad and bordering on symptomatic, I wear a red hoodie. These are all things that I wish we'd had in place as preemptive measures since I was 11 years old. It took AOT to educate us on the ins and outs of catching symptoms early, which is why I'm a firm supporter of AOT being implemented in counties and states that are still going without these programs and without these teams, so that today's people who are mentally ill need not go through unnecessary struggles and loneliness. AOT said to me, "It is not your fault that you're in this mess. You merely have a sickness. But here, we'll help you to get and to stay out of it." Thank you for your time.
That was incredible. If you try to tell me that that wasn't incredible, we were not watching and listening to the same thing. I can guarantee you that. So what you heard from Isaac first and then Bradley, a common theme. There was a lot that didn't help and didn't work for a long period of time for both of them. Then AOT is introduced and it's just the magic sauce, right? Like it helped turn their lives around, similarly to help it turn my life around. And that is exactly what AOT can do and does for people. Hence why I feel so passionate about advocating for it, and why Treatment Advocacy Center, not to speak on their behalf, but is, day in, day out, tirelessly working for advocacy and implementation related to AOT. Looking at the time, I see it's 3:15. I'm very grateful for everybody who is currently still stuck around from the minor technical issues that we experienced earlier on. But let's go ahead and get into the Q&A, which I could, Amy, I could scan back and read through them, or were you keeping track of an order of questions asked? Either way works.
Well, I'm gonna, I want to start with this one, and that is that Isaac said in his video that AOT is for anyone who wants and is seeking help. But AOT is actually an involuntary treatment program. There's this, you were both under, well, all three of you were under court orders, correct? Yes.
I was, yeah. Who do you want all three of us to answer that?
So how do you square the involuntary nature of AOT with your current beliefs? So,
right. Well, here's the difference, because I went through mental health court, aka mental health probation, for 14 months, and then I was picked up a little bit later by the AOT program. The difference for me was they will take you to those places to get the help. They will send your case manager or one of their team members with AOT to come and pick you up wherever you are in the county, sometimes even a little bit outside the borders of my county. So the difference between the probation for me and AOT, the probation was, if you don't walk these 7, anywhere from, depending on which place you're going that day for whatever, if you don't make it to the municipal court building, once a month for the judge, 2 to 3 times a week for drug and alcohol screenings, even though you have no history of drugs or alcohol, and all this other stuff with schizophrenia, bipolar classes, counseling, etc. They said, you have to find your own way to get there. Even though I didn't have a car at the time, I couldn't afford a car at that time. So I literally had to walk anywhere from 7 to 11 miles, like anywhere from 2 to 3 or so times a week, no matter what the weather was, for probation, or I'd be thrown, or they threatened me with 30 days in the county jail. There's that. And then for me, there's AOT, where they're like, oh, we want you to go to the talk therapist and your case manager, your counseling, your psychiatrist. Oh, and by the way, if you can't make it anywhere in the county for these things that we want you to go through, we will actually send someone to come and pick you up. That was the big difference for me. They weren't just, it wasn't threatening for me to be an AOT. It was nothing but helpful, because, and like I said, it wasn't just for counseling or for my psych appointments or things like that. It was also for, like, do you need groceries today? Do you need your lithium check? Do you, is there some errand that you need to run in order to help your family? Oh, we can help you do that too. I mean, they went above and beyond anything that a probation program usually does for people.
So
Thank you so much.
as a follow-up, so did you feel at any time during your AOT programs, did you feel coerced? And I know, Isaac, you're still on AOT, right? You still
right. And I'll go back to your first question about what in my video, that I did say that AOT is for people that want to seek help. I was talking more on in a different type of way that I got in. I got into AOT because I volunteered for that. I went to the El Paso Psychiatric Center here in El Paso, and I asked for the help. So I wasn't sent basically more on a like doctor's order until after I was diagnosed with some of my mental illnesses. But I already had mental illness, so I knew where to find the help. But with me having mental illness, I knew they would find me help with drug addiction. So that's why they referred me to the AOT team where VNA works as a chemical dependency counselor, because they knew that was the right AOT to put me in. So from there, we just went on with the court orders, and from there on. But I voluntarily went looking for the help. And that's why I say AOT is also for people that want to seek help, because if you're wanting to seek help, join a program like this, because do everything you can for them to actually put you into the court system or the court orders to get that help, because that's the only way you're going to do it, is by following the understanding of the court. And after that, basically it just becomes a bunch of free will.
Thank you so much for sharing, Isaac. So between the two of you, Bradley and Isaac, what we hear is that this incredible challenges and obstacles that both of you overcame, various kinds in both of your lives, and there were a number of things that didn't work and or were not meeting your needs for SMI and in your case addiction, Isaac. And then we introduce AOT into the equation, and your lives start turning around. So, I could sit here racking my brain trying to figure out what's the one thing or the special thing about AOT that's helping turn lives around. And I don't have the solid answer for that, because who knows exactly what it is. What we do know is when AOT is introduced in the equation, we hear stories from both of you. We see evidence in research that's released in articles reporting on AOT, where it's really helping people and families and society when a number of things just couldn't or wouldn't, as the case may be, up to that point. So for me, as most people know, it was just to finish out answering the question, it was involuntary for me, not voluntary as it was for Isaac. It was more similar to Bradley of the involuntary nature. But for me, again, for those who don't know and for those who do a refresher, I experienced about 15 years of failed voluntary services where meds didn't work and psychiatry didn't work, and going where I was supposed to go didn't work, getting the services I was supposed to get didn't work. So there was something about the special sauce, the key ingredient of AOT being introduced into my treatment and to Isaac's treatment and to Bradley's treatment that not only turned our lives around, but saved our lives and afforded us a new opportunity to live happily and healthy.
Yeah.
So I want to go ahead.
I would say this too. I always try to throw this out there as someone who's very, very, like, I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying, as someone who's very into like things like praying and theology and stuff, you cannot like just pray your way out of mental illness. So I like to throw that out there. And I also, as someone who is like raised in a very, very big like family martial arts culture, you can't just exercise and endorphin your way out of mental illness either, especially if you are on the schizophrenic spectrum like I am.
Thank you so much for sharing and adding that additional context, Bradley. I want to do some scrolling back. There are a number of excellent comments and questions coming in here. Let's see. So I see Cassandra, and I may be pronouncing the last name incorrectly, Kiesey. The question is, what state are you in? We in Ohio have lots of success stories. So I don't know specifically who that's addressed at, but we'll get both of you to answer that. So starting with you, Bradley, please share what state you're in.
I live in Ohio, and I live in Richland County, Ohio. Except for when I was at college, I've always lived in Richland County, Ohio. So that's my county, and it's like kind of like north central Ohio. It's about an hour away from Cleveland, and it's about an hour away from Columbus. So yeah, but I always like to add this is that AOT, I was literally the first person in the history of my county to ever be admitted into AOT and to ever graduate from AOT. The one thing that I did retain from AOT, well, the two things are I have the same psychiatrist that I had in AOT, and I have the same case manager who still meets with me, like I said, once every 14 days for just to talk and catch up and stuff. So yeah, but that's I'm north central Ohio is me.
Thank you so much for sharing, Bradley. And for you, Isaac, I'm sure there will be a number of people interested for reasons related to the fact that you did have a specialist as part of your team to help with addiction. Could you please let us know what city and state you're in?
I'm in El Paso, Texas.
Thank you for sharing. And I share in your vision, Isaac, with the hopes that other AOT programs at the very least consider the value of bringing on someone who's specialized in addressing SUD addiction, because it's no secret, like not everyone with SMI experiences addiction, but the overlap is huge. There's a large body of research and evidence showing that. So it's not like it doesn't make sense to at least explore and look into that. The next question I see here is from Anonymous, but it says, thank you both so much, both so inspiring. The question I have is, how did you come to the place where you felt you were ready, or when you maybe did not before? that seemed to be the most difficult part. Like people don't want it. They don't want meds, don't want therapy. They don't want to stop using substances, etc. So I'll go ahead and start with Isaac again. So again, the question is, in the sense that, prior to when Isaac, went to go ask for help, as you tell us, voluntarily, but before you got to that point, how did you sort of reconcile or decide, you know what, I didn't want meds before, I didn't want therapy before, I didn't want to stop using substances before, now I do? How did you get to that point?
I got to that point because I started to notice I was losing a lot of my friends. I was losing my family. I suffer from a 20-year addiction. So also the feeling of not wanting to be like that person anymore, the monster I had created, needed to get out of me. I needed to go get help because I was already starting to also get careless. I started to hallucinate. I started to do many things were happening and mentally as well. So where I didn't want to go to prison for, anything that I didn't mean to do or want to do because of my drug addiction. So I noticed that when I started college, I got worse because of all the partying in college and, everything going on through college. I got worse. When I graduated college is where I still acted like I was in college. And that was not for society, because out here people were like, no, it's not going to happen that way. So I got to the point where I didn't feel comfortable with being myself anymore, and I didn't even know who I was anymore. So that's when I decided to go get help.
Thank you so much for sharing, Isaac. I can definitively say I can relate. Like, I don't know what it's like to be you, but I know what it's like to feel that, where like, just question, like, who am I? I was whoever my SMI told me I was at any given time. Similarly to Brad, I was a secret agent. Me too. I was stopping assassination attempts on world leaders. That's who I am. And when we're busy thinking about stuff like that, we're not thinking about stuff that's related to our actual health and getting better, and the fact that we're not involved in reality. Because as unreal as all of that sounds, the way that I've said it, the way you've said it, Isaac, the way you've said it, Bradley, those things where we thought we were who we definitively weren't, how are we supposed to get help if we're like dead set on this belief that these things that aren't real, that are controlling my life, terrifying me, terrifying my family, making people nervous enough, in your case, Bradley, to be sent home from the university?
And like I said, I am indebted to the kindness of the person who was the president of that college at the time. He literally paid for my whole plane ticket home. And my mom asked, do you want to be reimbursed? And he said, don't worry about it. He said, he's a good kid, don't worry about it. But I've never even shared this with you before, but I was just thinking about like how you say that when you're, especially in your like an operative sort of delusion, or you think you're an operative, you can literally think that anything that you read or see or encounter is a message. Like when I thought I was a member of the Roman Curia, there was a bus that parked outside in like the parking lot adjacent to our parking lot, and it said Cardinal across the side of the bus. And I thought, oh, that's a sign from the papacy that I've been named a cardinal. So yeah, like everything around you, when you're delusional, you are not in the same, you may physically be in the same space as other people, but you are not mentally in the same realm at all.
Thank you so much for sharing, Bradley. I see a question here from Jerry Clark. It says, opponents to AOT consider it to be as coercive and abusive as the mental health court you describe. And I believe she's referring to your experience, Bradley. So can you please explain? I
did kind of touch on that a little bit, didn't I?
You did. The question was to explain how AOT is different from the mental health court. And I do think that you did address it. But if you can, because I know like that's a big talking point and a point of interest, not just for me and apparently here for Jerry as well, but a lot of people interested in it. So for folks, and I am not a legal expert, but I do know that AOT is a civil court proceeding, and the mental health court that you went through was not, as my understanding is, you punched a hole in a wall, you found yourself before a judge, and it was really more brought about by punitive actions. And so
Yeah, like nearly $1 grand in restitution, which is funny because I have a construction friend who says I could have fixed that for him for $40. But yeah.
Right. And so just building onto that just very quickly, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time, knowing that we're running a little long, so we'll get to just a couple of more questions. But one of the most powerful parts that stuck out in your story to me, Bradley, of all of it, to be honest with you, but one of them was when you find yourself before your probation officer and they're trying to convince you you're a criminal, when at this point you're aware of at least the most basic of levels, possibly more,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you're
yeah.
not a criminal. You're
Well, it's
there
funny,
because
I didn't have to be in AOT for very long. I only went to, because at the very beginning of AOT, you go before the judge once a week, and then after a month or two, it's every 2 weeks, and it goes from that until eventually it's only once every 2 months. But like I only had to go to like 1 or 2 hearings with my AOT judge, not the probation court. The probation court judge tried to convince me the whole 14 months I was in probation that no, you really are an addict. You're just not admitting it to yourself. And I told him I will walk to this building 2-3 times a week for the whole time I'm in this program, and I will prove to all of you, just to spite, I will prove to all of you that I am not an addict when it comes to drugs or alcohol. And you know what? I did. But like my AOT judge that I was given, he talked with me maybe like 20-30 minutes 2 times. And by the end of our second hearing, the second week, he's like, I can tell that you're not someone that struggles with drugs or alcohol. He's like, you're like the opposite of someone. I'm not trying to like badmouth Isaac or anything like that. I'm just trying to say, like, he could just tell. He said, I can tell by your body language, by how you talk, by your sense of humor, by what you say your interests are. Like, I can just tell that you're not someone who is addicted to the point where you're severely looking out for where you can get, your next fix or whatever. He's like, I've been a judge. He was about to retire. He said, I've been a judge for a little over 40 years, and I can usually tell if someone's, in some way addicted to something like that. He said it's not super hard to be able to tell.
That's a fair point. And it's also possible, like as you experienced, Bradley, sometimes we with SMI, when our symptoms aren't managed, can appear like we're on drugs, and that's unfortunately a go-to for people who are just looking for that maybe it's because they were trained to do, they may be because of personal experience, but there were plenty of instances where it just looked like I was on drugs, so that was the best guess.
But the probation judge and my probation officer, I'm like, I've literally never had an addiction to any type of alcohol or any type of drug. I'm like, I've never even abused like over-the-counter drugs, not even something like that. And both, the judge and my probation officer at the time both told me, oh, well, we've heard that one before. They're like, we've been doing this stuff for over, they always kind of say how long they've been in the game. They say, we've been doing this stuff for over 20 years, and you have no idea how many Sally sob stories come in here and claim that they don't have this problem. And I'm like, all right, whatever.
I hear you. Thank you so much, Bradley. So it's bottom of the hour. I'll take one more question. I'm going to ask the both of you to keep it relatively brief to respect the time that our audience has graciously given us today. So there's a question here from Leslie Carpenter, and it says, so some people argue against AOT, stating it is coerced treatment. Did you feel coerced during your AOT treatment, or did you feel it was more collaborative than other treatment you've received? Now, I'd like to start with Isaac, because interestingly enough, as we've heard from Isaac, he voluntarily sought AOT and got into it. So I'm actually curious to hear, Isaac, and I've never asked you this before. So you went into it voluntarily with no specific expectations based on past experience about what it would be. So did you feel at any point forced or coerced, or that you were doing something that others wanted you to do that you did not want to do?
Not this time around. I had other attempts where I tried receiving help, and the other attempts that I was receiving help, I was forced to go by my family. On this last one, I guess because I went and I wanted to do this, even if the court or anybody ordered me, the doctor ordered me to go to AOT or not, I was going to look for the help that I wanted. So I didn't feel forced at all. I felt more as a voluntary basis. And like I say in my speech that that I just felt they welcomed me with no judgment. They welcomed me. They let me have a voice. So I felt like I was helping myself find the help. I was actually helping myself, them help me. I was helping them help me. So yeah, I didn't feel not forced at all.
Thank you for sharing, Isaac. So Bradley, I know you've touched on this a few times, but the same question. So you did not go into this voluntarily, but you have, as you shared with us, a long history of saying like, here's the treatment you're going to get. Here's what you're going to need. Here's the meds you're going to take. Now here's different meds you're going to take. Now here's who you're going to see. And it was a long history of being told, this is what you're going to do. Then AOT enters into your life. And, what are your thoughts? Did you feel coerced at any point?
I didn't feel coerced or manipulated. I felt like I was being afforded with a great opportunity and I was being invited. There's a difference between coercion, manipulation, and threat of force, and something being so like, because when I first went before the magistrate, she said, here's the plan we're laying out. Here's all the services we're going to provide for you. Here's how we're going to help you get to those services. Here's how we're going to help you do this. And over the course of about 2 hours, the magistrate explained to me everything that was going to happen. And I actually had to sign a paper of consent, and I signed it, but I didn't feel coerced or manipulated. I saw a program that looked like it would be so beautiful and so helpful, and it was, that I felt invited.
And it's just so wonderful. And opponents of AOT may feel a need to argue that, like, well, we could provide these services if we're just kind and assertive about it in such a way where we're doing the same thing that AOT does, but without a judge or a civil court order. And I hear that argument. And then I hear these stories that you shared with us today, Bradley, that you shared with us today, Isaac, my personal story, and ones that I've heard so many other times from other people, where if that were true, if AOT isn't what was needed, why is it the thing that turned all of our lives around and helped so many other people? Look, like the evidence is there. I see Amy is unmuted, so I'm guessing that she would like to add something right here.
Nope.
Oh, no. Okay, in that case, I want to be very respectful of everybody's time. I see a lot of wonderful, thoughtful comments and questions. And if we did not get to your comment or question today, please feel free to reach out to me at smithe@treatmentadvocacycenter.org. I'll follow up with the panelists here. I'm sorry, Amy?
Sorry, my dog was eating my mask.
Everyone who's ever had a dog in this pandemic knows that scenario. That's what I'll say about that. So yeah, if anyone feels you want your question or your comment answered, or we did get to your question, but you have, follow-ups, please email me at smithe@treatmentadvocacycenter.org. That's Smith, SMITHE @treatmentadvocacycenter.org. I will follow up with our wonderful panelists here to get your questions and comments addressed. And I really am just so grateful for all of you tuning in today, giving us some of your valuable time and hearing these extraordinary, true stories of recovery from AOT. Thank you all so much.